Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report. And Tim Alexander has moved up from hour 3 to hour 1 today. And we'll have Tim on for the full hour. And then Chris Harris, our nuclear expert, we're going to do a major special on Fukushima Daiichi. And the hour 2 tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific time will be also on the Renz program with an update on that. We also want to talk in this first hour about the latest. I just got another update from one of my contacts on H7N9. This H7N9 virus, they just certified that they're going to go ahead and actually weaponize it in a laboratory, which means that the virus, which doesn't have the receptor binding domain, they're going to add it and see how it behaves. Well, we already know the virus replicates at a rate of 80,000 times more than any other virus, flu virus in history.
Which, Dr. Bill, is an extremely strong indicator, a massive red flag, that the virus has been cooked in a bio-war lab.
Well, I have two scientists, one Chinese that actually reported that, another right from inside DHS. So we now know from both the Chinese and American sources these viruses were definitely laboratory-derived triple recombinant plus.
Yeah.
So want to get into this, your news today. Let's go through it. I guess the one you want to start off with is a story about what's going on in Egypt.
Yeah, literally they're calling the massacre of Cairo. Somewhere between 500 and roughly 50, 525, 550 people and over 2,000 people were literally slaughtered in the streets within the last 24 hours by the Egyptian army. A large percentage of these people were women and children. Now, I'm not a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood by any wild stretch of the imagination. And in fact, in revenge protests and so forth, they burned several Christian churches down. So that kind of gets my blood up. But anyway, the military and the Egyptian army acted like a bunch of buffoons. They went in with armored vehicles, heavy weapon or fairly heavy weapons, assault rifles, and so forth. And they used live ammunition, high-powered military ammunition, and they literally just slaughtered people right and left.
Right, but this is standard fare for the Middle East, though.
500 to a couple thousand killed. You're looking at possibly, 10
5 times that injured, right?
Yeah.
Five times that. Yeah.
Blood everywhere. I mean, and it just you make martyrs out of people. And if you want to create a nightmare for yourself, this is the way you handle it. Because history shows that it does not intimidate the people enough. It infuriates them when their children, their wives, their other neighbors, friends have been slaughtered. And revenge will be it will come at a terrible price. This was incredibly stupid. Now Obama, has spoken out of both sides of his mouth.
Right.
Canceled a joint military exercise that was coming up, but then he's also said we're going to cooperate with the military in the future. And typical, eating your cake and having it too. But this is a mess. You really have, if you stand back from this, you have to ask yourself, who benefits from all this? And I'm at the point I'm not even sure, because I'll tell you, part of me says this sounds like something the Mossad would do, but I'm not sure even Bibi Netanyahu is this stupid, because they had a fairly safe situation before everything went to hell and the Muslim Brotherhood came in. Then when the Muslim Brotherhood came in, they began losing it. But this is a disaster. Like I said, they've made martyrs, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of martyrs were created in the last 24 hours. And this is how you create a civil war. This is not how you put a cap on things. So
right. In fact, and of course they have a lot of American-made weapons. Most people aren't aware that they have a.
And they get other use. They're building the M60
right.
in Egypt, and they have so damn many they don't even know what to do with them.
Right, and they also, by the way, have a contract to build the older version of jets, the M60 tank, and the old Emmer and Abrams tank, the older version of it. They're
That's
licensed
the
to
M60 Abrams, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one they're able to build. What's amazing to me is that they've keep on stocking them up with jets and ammunition. But I heard that the latest is from this episode is that they canceled the Egyptian-U.S. military games. So what's the story on that?
Yeah. Well, they have, but that's a show. I mean, the whole thing was a show to begin with. But like I said, speaking out both sides of his mouth. On one hand, Obama canceled the joint exercise, and then he said, but we have a lot of respect for the military. He condemned them for what they did, and on the other hand, said, they're our buddies. So,
well, first off, if they're it doesn't even make sense, because if they're their buddies are shooting the guys that he was supporting, which was Mohammed Morsi. So, and his gang.
We've been on both sides. The CIA basically was always running the Muslim Brotherhood. Of course, they'll never admit that, but when you get into the Middle East and intelligence agencies, it's the puzzle fellows turned upside down. It's bizarre, and it's almost as if someone, and maybe Satan himself, is creating maximum chaos in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and that I'm very concerned with that, because it has been very much in Israel's interest and our interest and the interest of the world for Egypt to have been taken out of the picture of being a frontline enemy for Israel. The Middle East is someplace that we need to cool off, and we seem to have been doing everything possible, particularly in the last few months, to turn the heat up.
Well, I think part of I want to read something off of Drudge to kind of highlight what you're saying. Scores of Christian churches' homes torched. This is in red on Drudge right now. Islamist group vows to bring down military coup. It's not a military coup. This was a conjoined organization. The military acted improperly now, but the actual organization that brought this before was basically a Muslim top cleric, the top new Christian, they call it the Pope, if you want to call it, of Egypt, right?
Yeah, Pope is an old word that means father, Papa.
Right. But yeah. Anyway, so in other words, it was
the patriarch of the Egyptian Coptic Church is called Pope. What other?
Yeah, but the point is that this was a conjoined effort. The problem is, we don't know on the ground the intelligence, but we know that for weeks now, the Muslim Brotherhood have really caused an incredible amount of trouble. They should have done it much more surgically. For example, if this is an Israeli operation, they would have done it surgically, just like, and I don't agree with the way they did it, because they used tactical nukes. It's actually 3 times the Israelis have used tactical nukes in Syria. Yeah, and they actually took out an entire division of Syrian troops and turned them into dust. Right in Syria.
Well, that wasn't a tactical. It wasn't a division. It was a brigade, but that's a big part of a division.
A brigade, yeah.
It was a chemical strike in that particular case. But they have done everything they could to provoke the Syrians into responding with their missiles, so that they can just go, crazy and publicly use their hydrogen bombs. And the Syrians have showed themselves to be very cautious chess players, but they're very tough people.
Right. Here's the response that will happen if it ever goes to what I call level X.
Oh, God.
Syria will release the largest barrage of chemical weapons and biological weapons and fuel air bombs in history on Israel. Israel will cease to exist, even if it nukes every country within 10,000 miles.
Both will
Syria will see the city of Damascus vaporized in ashes of the bowl with a nuclear weapon. And Russia... welcome back. And Tim, just to pull up a couple of articles that are right at the top of the list.
Before we go there, I did want to tell your viewers, I want to confirm that over 21 Christian churches have been completely burned to the ground in Egypt.
Wow.
And many more have been attacked. So we were able to check that while we were on break.
And by the way, you know that the Christian Pope is in collaboration with the Muslims and the others to stop this extremism. The extremists can't even be restrained by Saudi Arabia and these other Muslim Brotherhood affiliate countries who pulled the plug 4 months ago.
Yeah, the Saudis actually, and I'll tell you, it's gotten quite weird trying to keep track of who's dancing with who.
Yeah, Obama's still pushing.
Yeah, the Saudis who have been in bed with the Turks and the Omani or the Qataris in funding the so-called rebels, the foreign mercenaries that are attacking Syria. But now all of a sudden they have backed the Egyptian military for a variety of reasons. I think the ousted Muslim Brotherhood president was out of his league. I think when he called for a jihad from the Egyptian people against Syria, that's when the Egyptian army really lost it, because they said, this guy's just gone nuts. And there were a lot of other things happening that they were very concerned with. Here's the thing about Egypt, and the mainstream media won't tell you this. There have been two powerful forces in Egypt. The army, which is basically it's not just an army, it's a corporation, so to speak.
Right.
The generals at the top make the big bucks, okay?
They get all the money.
Fund them. Yeah, we fund them. Basically, it's about $3 billion a year. It's officially $1.5 billion, but when you add everything up, it's about $3 billion a year in American money that flows to their military. So there's lots of money for sticky fingers to grab onto year after year, month after month, week after week. So the generals have been getting incredibly rich. Okay, the only other major force has been the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been a CIA operation. And, you know, you want to control the opposition, as Lenin said. Well, the thing that has changed all this is the IMF went in and insisted on some austerity measures, the usual austerity fascism that we're seeing in Europe and increasingly in America. And the Egyptian young people, and they have an enormous young population in Egypt, they can't find jobs. And whether they're uneducated or college educated, there are very, very few positions out there. So they were behind the vote for the Muslim Brotherhood. They would have voted for anybody that was outside of the military.
But they weren't for Sharia law. They voted for anything other than Mubarak, but they weren't voting for Sharia law. And this is a misjudgment on the parts of the Muslim Brotherhood, assuming the young people, which are a large block of the population, were voting for Sharia, and they weren't.
No, they weren't. It's exactly right, and that's why so many of them, after a year of the Muslim Brotherhood being in power, they didn't improve the economy. There's still no jobs. And what they were getting from them, it was this Sharia law and all this ridiculous nonsense. And they said, hold it, we don't want that. We want jobs. We don't have any jobs, and now you want us, the women have to wear veils, and we have to do this and do that. Well, that's not what we want. We want jobs. And they didn't deliver, okay? Now, the mainstream media will not report that, particularly in America, because they're scared to death that will be a template without the Muslim Brotherhood for Europe and for America. You have all these people. I mean, in some places in Europe, you know, you're looking at 60-70% of young people don't have any jobs.
Spain is like that.
All
Spain was
being created in America. 95% are part-time.
Tim, a decade ago, Spain was a massive growing economy, late 90s,
Absolutely.
early. And now, if you're between 20 and 35 years of age, the unemployment is 60 to 65%, and the rest of the population is like 30%. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
And so this is what's scaring the living hell out of the people at the apex, the globalists that are running everything, is they know that they're doing an extremely fine balancing act, and they've got to keep all the plates up in the air so that when everything collapses, it collapses the way they want it, so they can take the next step to the New World Order.
Now, the day before yesterday, we had on Brent Sr., the father of 10 kids, girls and boys, that he had built this doomsday castle. And the first show was on Tuesday night. There's going to be 7 more on Nat Geo. We had him on for a segment in hour 2 and then the full hour 3. And there was a couple of points where we had disagreement. He was saying that, that the government's preparing. I said, there's no evidence the government's preparing for any disaster. I mean, he's preparing for things like, CME, and then there's no evidence. Lisa Murkowski, the senator, actually blocked the bill that was put up 4 years ago in the Senate to actually harden the power grid. And by the way, if it goes down, the power backup step-down transformers are all made in China now, so you're not going to get any. It'll take 3 to 5 years to get them.
After about 30 days, when the fuel runs out for all the nuclear power plants, Fukushima here, Fukushima there, Fukushima everywhere.
Right. Now, also all these plants, by the way, are sitting ducks for nuclear terrorism. If you really wanted to do something, you fly in a plane, bring an APC, just blow it up with conventional weapons on a nuclear site with liquid and other radioactive waste, and you'll not only create a dispersion of particles in the troposphere and the water supplies, but you also can create critical reactions. If you take a hammer to a big ball of plutonium, the first thing you're going to see is a big flash. And that's not a good flash. That's a flash where you've seen gamma rays hit the back of your eye causing photons to make you see a big flash, but within minutes you're going to get nauseated, but in a half an hour you're going to get cardiac arrhythmias and death.
Yeah, you'll meet your maker very quickly.
You are going to grow wings real fast. Now, the problem is that we have on sites like San Onofre enough nuclear material over 50 plus years to literally make thousands of nuclear bombs. And most of this stuff is not even solid. Some of it's in liquid radioactive waste containers that are easy, and there's really no security barriers around these plants. They have really what we call minimum security. If you're really determined and you brought in a tank or something there, or brought in a drone or an aircraft or a cruise missile, which could be very easily, it could be below radar. You can drive in a cruise missile at 60 feet above the ground at, hundreds of miles an hour, even a toy one, and you could blow the crap out of the place.
I've been involved in military aerospace for 30 years. I have to tell you, these things are not that high tech.
Right, and I talked to Senator Tom Daschle,
but it just to blow something up with something that's remotely operated, that's not high tech.
I talked to Senator Tom Daschle in October after 9/11, who was a leading Democrat at the time of that situation, and he told me that when I told him what was going on at Rocky Flats, he said, "Look, I took care of hazmat teams out there at Rocky Flats, outside of Denver, which is the second most radioactive place on Earth. The worst is the Bunkinar Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where the Russians made all their launches and their nuclear tests. And Rocky Flats is even worse than Hanford. And they had literally concrete pads with containers full of liquid radioactive highly grade plutonium sitting on there for 5+ decades. This is crazy, and they had to close all the airspace around it." Welcome back, and the Tears for Fears bumper is a pretty appropriate one. We've got some, bad news. One of our contacts, Paul, I'm going to not mention his last name, he's one of our contacts inside the government, contacted me earlier today with the latest that there's one of the bioscientists here that's actually getting ready to bunker down. If he sees the threshold of 150 cases of H7N9 and know that it's now got the receptor binding domain. There's also reports in the news here that the H5N1, they're playing around in Asia with a H5N1 vaccine, and they cause a local little explosion of cases of a local epidemic of H5N1. All that has to happen is that the H7N9 has to recombine, or a mixing vessel literally be co-infecting a person or an animal that has the receptor binding domain to human cells like H5N1, H1N1, H3N2, etc., H1N9, which is in the Middle East, and all of a sudden you go from a oh my gosh virus to a Armageddon plague. And this scientist is basically saying if this thing gets any worse, he's going to go, as they say, he's going to go into the rabbit hole. He's going bye-bye.
Dr. Bell, you and I both know that they've already mixed all this stuff up. And I mean, how this works is you have bioscientists that they all day long, every day, they run various experiments and they tweak
well, I can tell you how they tweak it. They use a bioengine. You can actually create a virus de novo, and they've done it for the last 10 years. They took the polio virus, and they actually were able to take it to a smaller virus, and they were actually able to create the polio virus from a gene sequencer, and the data, literally the sequence of amino acids that makes up the codons. So, believe it or not, they're able to
create it from scratch. They don't even need.
They don't even need it. That's why when they talk about hacker, the human artificial chromosomes or hack chromosomes that DARPA talked about in the last few weeks, there you can go and publish. You can check the published reports yourself. It's not my opinion. And you can see they can actually create this hack gene de novo. They don't need to have an animal donor. They can use the animal donor as a kind of like a template, but they can actually create the gene sequences and test it on animal models.
It's very much like a template because essentially what you're dealing with is like a cookbook, and it's knowledge,
right.
And you can assemble it in a sense, from scratch. You don't need the original virus if you know the template. And now they have, God help us, there are probably thousands of deadly man-engineered viruses in labs.
Most of those from the old Cold War era. But in the U.S., they stopped making most of those in the early 70s when the T virus got out. But they switched to making toxigenic molds. So 85% of the budget was actually toxigenic molds, or the toxigenic mold products, so they could use it in the battlefield.
What I call biochemical weapons, because they make toxins that are much longer lasting than a chemical agent, and they can spread them, and you touch it and you get it on you, and it's very persistent for many days, and you touch it and you will get the effect of whatever it is that they cooked up for you to get, which can be very sudden death or any number of things. But not everybody has gone that route, predominantly, and evidently the Iranians have not. And that's why it is so insane to be pushing for a general Middle Eastern war with the Iranians, because they basically inherited by purchasing the Soviet advanced biological warfare program. And I mean, this stuff is insanely dangerous, and they use it as a doomsday weapon. And by
the way, they shared collaboratively with the labs in Syria, and all the bioweapons. By the way, I saw the actual receipts delivered by FedEx to Saddam Hussein, including other biological weapons sent from Bethesda. I actually saw the actual delivery slips, so people don't realize that we are, during the Iran-Iraq war, sent biological weapons to Saddam Hussein. Those weapons, by the way, along with the Gerald Bull super cannon components and other weapons that they shared with Iran, those weapons, by the way, Syria has with Iran, the most advanced biological weapons in history, the largest fuel-air bomb system in history, and the Syrians are no slouches. They were collaborating with North Korea.
Gerald Bull was this genius on artillery, and they got around not having sufficient, extremely high-grade metal piping to build the massive artillery tubes, because basically nobody was making them, and they couldn't get that high grade steel. So you know what they did? They took oil field pipes, very, very big oil pipes. You know, you practically drive a Volkswagen through. And then they took very hot steel cables, red hot, almost white hot, and wrapped them around it many times in different directions. And of course, if you know anything about wood, fiber plywood is very, very tough, but it's multiple layers running in different directions. That's why it's so tough for the weight. Well, they've made tubes that are extremely tough, and then at the end of the tube they have this firing mechanism, and they can launch things thousands of miles away. Gerald Bull was launching stuff. He designed systems to launch weapons into space using artillery.
Yeah.
And so the Syrians, the Iranians, and many others in the Middle East, I'm sure probably the Israelis too, have weapon systems now that have artillery shells that are extreme long range, and they're just virtually unstoppable. And you can put in those shells what you want, be it a biotoxin, an advanced biological weapon, a pure air explosive, a nuke, or a radiological bomb, or just a plain old dumb bomb, as we call it, a conventional bomb. And you really cannot stop an incoming artillery round. In theory, sure, some of the anti-missile missiles can stop it, but in all practical reality, you're not going to hit but 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 25.
Right.
And
now we have a series of converging disasters happening, and I tell people they need to take care of their health first. After they pray and they're a believer, they need to take care of their health. They need to get off drugs onto natural therapy. That's why we have our NutriMet protocols.
Well, what you did for me with this reading that you were able to do, I mean, when I first saw it, this is really right on. This is me, because I know me.
Yeah. Well, what we did basically, and this is, I think, 3 weeks ago, we did is...
I was the first.
Now, of course, 32 years ago, and I've said this on the program before, God gave me a gift of being a medical, basically giving me a gift of medical discernment, or we call it word of knowledge. And it's a very remarkable one. It's not a little mild gift. It's like I've used it hundreds of thousands of times since then. But I was receiving in prayer that I should do this as a proxy, where I take my little quantum resonance analyzer and hold the electrode for a person at a distance. Now, you're in Indiana and I'm in California, so I did it, and your test came out, not mine. Now, since then, I've done it on a number of people. In fact, I had a lady, I just did her test yesterday and reported to her. She has some very serious problems. And she was amazed. I mean, she thought, this is not possible. And the way I did it, to prove it to her, I said, I don't want to hear your history. I'll do the test first, dry, and then I'm going to ask you questions after I see the results on the chart of the test. Now, how does it work? It works basically on quantum resonance. It also works on the basis of a quantum university. Although we are an I, just like Jesus said, we're also a we. We're all connected. So when we don't realize it in the quantum, the spirit world, we're not separate. We're all one.
Yeah, it's very much quantum mechanics, quantum physics.
Right.
And it's where...
But it also shows that God is the one, the author of all of it.
It's where theology and hard science interact.
Right, meet. Right. And it shows all of it is one. And it's, Jesus taught that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Welcome back, and we have a question from George in Oregon, a little off topic, but a very important one because it's a big issue. The population of people in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, a lot of people even younger, including now in the military, are still getting mercury amalgams. George, tell us the issue and the question you have.
Well, it's actually with my sister. She recently went to an organic dentist and got her amalgams removed.
Good.
And she's been having, she wants to detox the mercury afterwards, and she really can't afford a whole lot of products, but she wanted to know what your top 3 products would be for that.
I'll tell you the three top. Keeler Max, to keep out the heavy metals, Liquid Zeolite, and Nutri-Trella. And then if you had a fourth, it would be Cell Detox Glutathione. Okay? Those would be the top. And the reason is Keeler Max is going to pull out the heavy metals, Liquid Zeolite, non-acid wash, better than any other zeolite. Then you got to remineralize with Vitamineral Max and Minerals Plus. So... you got to replace the minerals when you chelate, because if you don't, you're going to end up with mineral deficiencies of major, like calcium, magnesium, potassium, and minor minerals as well. So that's really important. You can never determine if someone's completely free of mercury until you do the 3 levels of tests. First, you have to do a challenge test with DMPS or DMSA Chemet, which is a prescription, right, for several days with a fast. And then the doctor can test the urine and stool to see if it's present there. And Genova Labs has a kit for it. Genova Labs in Atlanta. Doctors Data has one as well. There's a couple of labs that are very good that can do that, and we'll be having them on the show. Some people will sequester the minerals away, the heavy metals away in their central nervous system and solid organs so avidly, the only way to get it out is to have them go through a pulse magnetic field, like the Somopulse, Medither, or PMT 100. The PMT will really jam it out. So you can literally lay someone on a PMT therapy bed, and within 7 minutes they'll start dumping mercury or heavy metals out of their system. So you got to have them buffered with high-dose Power C, with cell detox glutathione, with antioxidants, because they're going to start getting mercury moving from a sequestered area into a central circulation that can cause damage. And I did the original research with Dr. Murray Vimy in 1980 at the University of Calgary. And later on, Dr. Hal Huggins lost his dental license in Colorado and came back from Mexico, and then won a suit in the state of Colorado. And later on, Hal is, of course, a top expert on Murray. And I did the work back in 1980. We were using a mercury sniff meter and a microvoltmeter for measuring the voltage across teeth. And if you have a third metal, like a crown, it increases the voltages. So the best way to tell if your mercury amalgams are still generating is to chew gum for, say, 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Take a microvoltmeter, you can get at Radio Shack or Amazon, and put it across the tooth amalgam surface in the side of your gum. And if there's no voltage, there's no mercury, it's gone. The other way to do it is to actually do a mercury challenge test, and the third, which is real simple, is to do a quantum resonance analysis and test. And we're going to, by the way, I have the machines coming in from China. They'll be here on Monday. We're going to sell them for $2,200, 10% off, and every machine I will provide interpretation reports as part of the cost of the machine. So if you email me your report, I'll tell you what the report means, because you need an interpretation and recommendations from that. But that'll tell you if you number one, if there is heavy metals present, and if it's come out, and then you can confirm it if you're really curious with the proper challenge test at Genova Labs, where you do, take the drugs, the oral drugs like Keeler Max or Chemet. Keeler Max actually I think is better than the Chemet that the doctors usually prescribe. It's the most powerful oral chelating agent you can get, and then you can prove it. And if it won't come out, you can use things like a Somopulse to pull it out of the major body bones, because it's going to stay sequestered there for years.
She's been having some mood issues.
Mercury is going to cause mood issues. It's going to cause oxidative stress. So you want to take gamma E plus for the brain, cell defense, which will stop brain inflammation, upregulation of enzymes that are inflammatory in the brain, and cognition plus, because it's going to cause neurofibrillar tangles, peroxynitrate radical in the brain, and break down the blood-brain barrier. Mercury toxicity is real bad. It's also a major cause of capillary microvascular disease, so it can lead later on to hypertension, heart failure, and vascular disease and dementia. So you don't want to just pull up the mercury amalgams and think we're done. Now the mercury's out of your teeth. In fact, you can dump more now that you've taken the deposit in the teeth. You'll actually get we call it the arsenic and old lace response, where basically as you pull out the arsenic out of the diet, it's like the old story when they stopped poisoning the person with a mild dosage of arsenic is when the body dumped it and the person died. I remember if you read that book, Arsenic and Old Lace. So the whole idea is the body dumps toxins when you stop supplying a small dosage of the toxin, which are still present in the teeth. Yeah, interesting, hey?
Yes, definitely.
So if you want more information, drop me an email or call, and I'll give you the abbreviated protocol. And as I say, I'm available for believers for a remote quantum resonance analysis. If you want to purchase a machine, the machines will be available. In fact, I'll be posting them up today. They're going to be $2,200. I'm going to take 10% off for a special now. It'll continue through the holidays, including our special coming up on Friday before Labor Day, and so that weekend we're going to continue it into September. And I provide all reports for people to purchase a machine. If you do a consult and to cure quantum resonance analysis, the consult fee is $150 for half an hour, but I don't put people on the clock, so if it goes beyond that, we don't charge. And if someone is a customer and they've had a quantum resonance analysis. I'll do a repeat and without any charge. So the idea is you want to know if
you
you're
made
making
a believer
progress.
out of me. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah, it works. It works. And we also, there's quantum physics behind this. I tell people, be skeptical. If you don't believe it, you can spend $5,000 or $10,000 on fancy tests and prove everything that I'm saying. Do a mercury amalgam, challenge test for heavy metals. Use pulse magnetic fields to really mobilize out of your bones after you take DMPS or DMSA. No matter what the issue is, I can tell you conventional imaging studies, advanced ones, people say, I don't believe that you can identify cancer. I say, sure you can do it. It's the standard of care is coronal section, spiral CT scan, thin cuts with a PET scan. If you want to see if your brain's improving after you remove the mercury, you do those things. Do a quantitative EEG, a SPECT scan, because the blood flow patterns will change, and a functional MRI scan or positron emission tomography with fluorodeoxyglucose, which is positronic glucose. So I've done all these tests, and I can tell you exactly how to interpret them. And if you send them to me, I will interpret them for you, because I'm also a medical legal expert in all these areas. And it sounds a little exaggerating, but I am. The most powerful thing you have when you're an expert is a thing called reading, number one, and number two, using quotation marks. That's all you have to do. You don't have to, although I've done every kind of medicine, including every kind of surgery except for open heart and brain. I've done eye surgery, vascular surgery, orthopedic surgery, plastics, abdominal surgery, trauma, emergency intensive care, rural surgery in the middle of nowhere, military medicine, and radioactive nuclear medicine, occupational medicine. So like a sponge, like with my experts. So I tell you, if I don't know, I'll go back, there's a lot of things I don't know, and I'll do research, and I will, over the next 3 or 4 days, master an area and tell you, oh yeah, you're weird genetic syndrome, this is what's going on. So I'll pull up the latest literature, I'll send it to you and your doctor, and show you this is the pathway. And if you want to do conventional tests, I'll tell you what ones to do. And I provide, by the way, all those consults to our customers free. And that's anywhere in the world. I will, at my own dime, call or Skype or email anybody on the planet, doctors and patients, and I do consults every day because it's a ministry. But we need your support. We need you to stop getting foolish nutraceuticals like Youngevity, which is garbage, or other vitamins you get from your, quote, chiropractor, naturopath who wants to flog those, or multi-levels. You need comprehensive protocols, and you need ways of testing to see that these actually are making progress. And I tell people, be skeptical. Even when you get your quantum analysis or you have a consult, if you want to do testing, I'll tell you the conventional tests to do, like lipid fractionation, C-reactive proteins, and stress tests, or carotid artery duplex scans, or CT scans of your heart, or high-speed CT scans to look for calcium scores. So be skeptical, and if you want to do tests, I'll tell you which ones to do to make sure that your conventional doctors do them. Most doctors are lazy, and we're talking about conventional standard of care medicine. I had a lady the other day that caught me at the wellness center, and she said, Doc, I got this big 3.5 centimeter, lump on my neck. It's a thyroid nodule. And I said, well, gee, is it affecting your airway or your voice? He said, yeah. I said, well, you need surgery to remove it because it's an obstruction. Well, it can turn into cancer. He said, the doctors don't know. I said, well, look, first off, you need to do an ultrasound to see if it's solid or cystic. And the gold standard, if it's going to turn into cancer, is you do an ultrasound-directed biopsy, and you do karyotype analysis with a pathologist, and you do a coronal section CT scan with thin cuts, a special weighting, and then within 48 hours, a positron emission tomography fluorodeoxy scan. It'll show if it's metabolically active. That's the gold standard of care, but most doctors are lazy. That's why if I ever wanted to go back into practice, I'd probably become a doctor-lawyer, and you'd see me not in a white coat, you'd see me with a three-piece suit and a clipboard walking into court. I have a bad attitude, and I have a lot of reason for it. So if you want to get help, it's free for our customers. It's a ministry, but we want you to support and purchase only NutriMeds. That's what keeps us on the air. That's what gives us the opportunity to get amazing stories and information out, like with Tim Alexander and Chris Harris. Because we are not just the best, we're the only ones that are really going to help you.